TV Network.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of Real Footage, the web video series with Tim Davis inside Studio 8 at Tim D Productions. We have a very special show for you today for fans of the cable TV network Nickelodeon. I also have a special guest with me for the very first time in here in Studio 8, and one of my biggest friends, Adam Belveduto. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me, buddy.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, cool.
So the topic today is that of Nickelodeon. Now, we're referring to Nickelodeon not as what you see on the network today, but referring back to the time when Adam and I were both growing up in the 1990s. That's, to us, was Nickelodeon.
That's the golden era.
Yeah, the golden era of Nickelodeon. The animation of that time was very innocent and simple compared to some of the more modern stuff you see these days. And for the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to be reminiscing about those good old days of Nickelodeon and sharing lots of fun things here with you. So let's get this show started.
Well, Tim, it was a more wholesome time. There was a lot more goodness about the whole era of cartoons, game shows, and just television in general. I don't exactly know what exactly is going on right now at Nickelodeon, but I'm not happy with it.
No, no. I think I stopped watching it sometime in the early 2000s because I was tired of the trend that they were setting at that time. For myself, when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s, at that time, Nickelodeon was all about Canadian-based programming. And I think we spoke about this numerous times before off camera, but I believe it was cheaper to produce the shows in Canada than it was here in the United States. Is that possible?
Oh, definitely. That was back when, what was that? You Can't Do That on Television.
Yes.
Was on a show.
The Elephant Show.
Yeah.
And Mr. Wizard's World were a few examples of that.
Back when the slime had a different consistency. It was like oatmeal.
Yeah, and I believe it also was a different color as well. It used to be orange slime, and then they made it into a green over the years. So after the 80s, Nickelodeon decided to start making a lot of game shows, live-action game shows like Double Dare.
Yeah.
So they kind of did away with the Canadian-style formats. They were now going into the rerun era. And they were now bringing Double Dare and shows of that, like Nick Arcade.
Oh, yeah, Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah, the game shows. So in order to accommodate that new move that they were going into, they built a studios that was an attraction at Universal Orlando in Florida. It was known as Nickelodeon Studios, and it opened its doors for the very first time in the year of 1990. And that is now where all the live production came from out of there.
Yep.
Shows like Double Dare What Would You Do?
What Would You Do? Figure It Out.
Yes.
What else did we have? You had Global Guts, which was another show that was pretty good, but I was more of a Double Dare fan myself.
Right.
But yeah, all in all, it was a great place. I was never actually in the studios, but I was at Universal Studios, and I always used to see the building, and I always wanted to go inside it, but I never did.
I never had the chance to either as a young child, but I always wanted to, and I think by the time we were almost ready to, it was no longer in use, and we'll get to that in a few moments as well. And you remember watching Nick Arcade a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You remember some of the games they had to play on there?
Yeah, I would have killed to be on that show. I used to sit there and I'd watch, and I'd say, when they'd have the option to choose a specific game, they never chose the game that I wanted.
No, they always would choose something that you didn't want. And I remember at that time in the 90s, Sonic the Hedgehog, the very first original one for Sega Genesis, was popular. And they put that into an arcade-style game. And that would be one of the choices that one of the young contestants would be able to choose from on the show. They never would pick it.
I know.
Except for the one time, the one boy did, and I think he lost with in the first 15 seconds of it. How you could do that with Sonic, I don't understand. But
he was probably just nervous.
Yeah, he was nervous, probably just stage fright, and plus it was actual arcade style games.
I never understood the concept of when you would go at the end when you'd go into the video game. What they would do is they'd have you in front of a blue screen.
Yes.
Even before the green screens are around. And I don't know exactly how that worked, because I don't think the kid could actually see what was going on.
No.
I think they told him exactly what to do, whether he was running or jumping. You would never see that now in this thing.
No, you wouldn't. But again, like I said, it was a simple era, and it was just good, clean fun. And then they had the different versions of Double Dare. They had the original.
And then they had Family Double
They had
Dare.
Family and Super Sloppy Double Dare. You remember that one? I always tuned into that show the most at the end when they did the obstacle course with the flags.
With the big ear, when you had to go inside the ear. And
Yes.
dig.
or the car wash thing with the brushes that would be going around. To us, Adam and I, that was Nickelodeon right there.
Definitely.
Now, over the years, the studios became a huge attraction in Orlando. But then as animation started to kick in, more and more of the live action shows began to decrease at the studios.
Yep.
And then they were having layoffs there. Now, let's focus on the Nicktoons category.
Okay.
Okay, Nicktoons. Shows like Rugrats.
Doug. Hey Arnold. What else we have? Rocko's Modern Life.
Ren and Stimpy.
Oh God, Ren and Stimpy is one of the best. I'm wearing my Ren and Stimpy T-shirt right now.
Yeah, there it is.
Vintage. This is from 1992.
Special occasion for this episode. But they were some of the original Nicktoons. They started it all. Nowadays you have like SpongeBob SquarePants,
Which is fair.
which is okay
It still
for.
kind of has a Nickelodeon feel, but I don't know if it's specifically because we grew up in the 90s, but I think that the Nicktoons of the early and mid 90s, even a little bit of the late 90s, were the best animation cartoons of all time. Not specifically the drawings were as good as a Looney Tunes or Merry Melodies, but the feel and the environment of those cartoons were the best.
That's true. Yeah, I totally agree on that. Even though a lot of those shows, they only aired for what, like a season or two, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
Doug, I think, was only on for 1 or 2, 3 years.
Yep.
However, Rugrats went for almost, I believe, a decade.
Yeah.
That was still going into the 2000s after its early 90s premiere.
And Doug had a little bit long of a run, but the problem was when Disney ended up buying it, it wasn't the same.
No.
Disney's Doug and Nickelodeon's Doug were two different ballparks.
It had the Disney flavor to it, where that other one had the Nick flavor to it. And Our Real Monsters, that was another one.
Yeah. Rocket Power was another one.
Kind of off the wall in the humor category, but it entertained people for many a years.
Oh, totally.
And then they introduced Hey Arnold, which is one of my favorite current shows now. We're watching in reruns here on a weekly basis, debuting in around 96, 97.
Great show. Running
up until about 2004. Same thing with that. From Nick, the animation, I believe, got better and better as the years went on for that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I loved, personally, my favorite show was Doug.
Yes.
I love Doug. I love the humor in it. I love when they would dramatize Doug's dreams.
Yeah.
Like when he would have a zit on his nose.
Yeah.
It would turn into the biggest thing in the world. And it was such a small problem, but the way they dramatized everything.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is when I watched those shows as a kid, I never imagined them being so short. They crammed 2 episodes, and what would that be, 22 minutes?
Around, yeah. They would be very short, but they get 2 stories in a half hour like Hey Arnold does.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Or if it was a special occasion, it would be a holiday episode. It would be the entire 30 minutes, or with commercials about 22, 24.
Absolutely.
So
they need to bring them back.
Yes, they do. Do you remember the production company at the end of Doug when the closing credits would roll? Remember? Yes. It was the...
was that Klasky Supo, or is that something?
That was Rugrats, I believe.
Okay.
Jumbo Pictures.
Yeah,
that big egg. And it would make that weird like yodeling or something. I'm not a musician. I can't make sounds like that, but it was a unique sound of that time. Yeah. Nowadays people might frown upon it, but for people that lived it, it was a very special time.
Yeah.
So you might want to say then that the animation department did in the studios.
You know, another good thing about watching the animations is on a Saturday night, they would begin a Saturday night of programming with the animations, and then that would turn into Snick.
Yes.
And Snick was definitely something that was special in television, and I don't understand where it went.
For viewers that don't understand what we're talking about, Snick was a late night Saturday night block on Saturday nights that ran from around 9 p.m. to 11.
Yeah.
Or 8 to 10.
The big orange couch.
Yeah, the big orange couch. And it would be mostly for a young adult type audience. The shows that were on there were geared more towards like late teens.
Yeah, you had your sketch comedy, all of that. And you had your your late night suspense. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, Keenan and Kel.
Keenan and Kel.
Yeah, it was a very special time, and don't forget too, in the afternoons in the summer we had
Nick in the Afternoon.
Yep.
With your host Stick Stickley.
Yeah, it was a popsicle stick with eyes glued onto it and a little furry, fuzzy nose, and somebody behind the scenes would make this stick move in front of the camera, and they would spin the wheel, and
oh God, the wheel. When it landed on my favorite shows, like Salute Your Shorts, when that hit Salute Your Shorts, my mind would blow. I'd say yes. Also, Doug. When it would land on stuff like Real Monsters, I wasn't too big.
Time to leave the room. I mean, if you were a fan of that show, it was good. But if you weren't, you would leave and come back, and hopefully the stick would land on one of your favorite shows. But it only ran for like a few hours, though. And then, regular programming came in. And then remember, too, when Nick at Night used to share some of their programs on the Nickelodeon schedule. Like, they used to have the Brady Bunch running sometimes in the one years because of, like, the kids in school themes.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That was definitely very well-rounded for the high school and the junior high crowd.
Yes. I totally agree. And then SpongeBob SquarePants came in around 1999. That's when I kind of threw in the towel.
Yeah.
And I was at that time focusing on the other Viacom-related network, TV Land. I was focusing more on them a lot at that time. I like to say that was Nick at Night was my grade school years, and TV Land was my college years, as I like to call it. So I kind of gave up on Nickelodeon, and I have never really went back after that. But the 90s and in some of the 80s for me is a special place.
Oh, yeah.
Because of what they did and how they presented it, too.
Yeah, if I had a time machine, that's where I'd be right now, watching Nick at Night or Nickelodeon. I don't know exactly what Nick at Night is turned into either. They're playing a lot of not current, but pretty new rounded shows, and I prefer, the Monkees.
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock.
That's because we had them more in our viewing access back then. It's a different generation. I understand that because when we were young, Nick at Night went back 20 years, and 20 years in like the 80s and the 90s was like going back to the 60s and the 70s. Now, it's in the 2010s, they're going back to the 80s and 90s, which makes perfect sense, but for people that love retro style entertainment, it doesn't really do us anything these days, so we have to go elsewhere for it.
Honestly, my ideal Nick at Night right now would be classic Nickelodeon shows. Now, they already own the rights to them.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they couldn't just start playing classic television from the 90s, the golden era of Nicktoons animation, game shows.
And run them during the overnight hours. It's a good idea, and I don't know if it's ever been released as an idea anywhere, but it's possible.
Definitely.
And I remember we've been talking about this for years, except this is the first time on camera, that they basically should have done that, especially nowadays. Currently, they're running episodes of Full House. That's a good show.
Good show.
Yeah, it's just fun to watch, and I believe
That's on like 20 channels right now, though.
Yeah.
That's reachable. I mean, Full House you can find on another station, but if you can get Salute Your Shorts back,
yeah,
that would be a lot better.
Well, if you have the higher tier cable networks on bigger cable packages or satellite packages, you could get their classic channels that feature those shows. But if you don't have them, you can't really see them unless you go online or you buy the DVDs if they're available to buy.
Yeah.
So, it's amazing what happens over time, but that's progress, especially in the big businesses and corporate headquarters. So we have a few things here to share. Behind us here is a sign that I purchased a few years back. This is from, I believe, an early 2000 of the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards. I don't know, were you ever really big with the Kids' Choice Awards? I never really watched them.
I dabbled in it, but it wasn't really my cup of tea.
No, they had a lot of famous rock bands at that time that were current, especially in the 90s, like Backstreet Boys, Savage Garden. They would come on. Rosie O'Donnell show used to host a show for many years there. A lot of the big celebrities would be there. I never really got into them. And then Nick News.
Nick News with Linda Ellerby.
Linda Ellerby, yeah. She that show is actually currently in 2015, as far as I know of, is actually still in progress. It's on for over 20 seasons.
Oh my God!
It debuted in 1992, and it's very well known for letting kids speak their mind, to letting them have like a platform to speak, and the show's been doing that since the 90s, covering topics that are important of the time, things that are going on in the world. just the other day, I remember I was flipping through the channels and I came across an episode on Nickelodeon of Nick News, and it dealt with kids with sports equipment at their high schools. They wanted better equipment and better facilities, and it was amazing to actually come across an old school Nickelodeon show like that on currently in 2015.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a good thing, and that's always been a pretty positive show.
Yes.
So I mean, I'm definitely a fan, and definitely good to see something still exists from the old school.
Yes. And we also have some things here too as well to share with you. This here happens to be in memory. I put this together. This actually is a picture of Nickelodeon Studios when it was in Florida, in operation from 1990 to 2005. The studio closed for the very last time in 2005 after many layoffs, and they moved their production headquarters to the West Coast, is where their animation studios was, and that was where the money was at the time. That facility is now currently the Blue Man Group. But it's still certain parts of the building which are not visible to the public still has a lot of the paintings on the walls and the color schemes from when it actually was Nickelodeon Studios to this day.
I'd love to go there.
Yes. And they also they had the slime geyser out front. They had a taxi cab that was used as a promotional item for Nick at Night in the 90s. That was parked out front. And they also, in 1992, placed a time capsule on the ground in front of the studios. And the children of that year put items into the capsule that were important to them at that time. Now, a lot of this could be hearsay, but I remember reading online, some of the items was like a Game Boy.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely a good item for that. That represents the 90s.
Yeah, there was a then current magazine of Nickelodeon magazine. Remember that magazine they put out?
That was a nice magazine.
Okay, so that current issue of that, somebody put a VHS tape of, I believe, Home Alone 1.
Oh boy.
Okay, because that and
that just screams 90s.
Yeah, and from what I understand, they also went as far as putting like snack foods in there as well.
Wow.
Yeah, like gummy snacks
like
or something.
Fruit roll up.
Yeah, but I don't know how that will look when they open it up. But. The opening date for that is April 30th of 2042.
Oh,
and
boy.
It seems far away, but we're actually starting to creep up on it now, a tiny bit, because I remember in 92 they made a big deal about this, and they actually had an on-air special for it, showing the kids putting the items into it and sealing it up. And there's a picture of it here, right here, of what it actually looked like when it was on the grounds of the then Nickelodeon Studios. It says on it, the first world headquarters for kids do not open until April 30th of 2042.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Tim, did they relocate this?
Yes, they did. This time capsule when the studios moved
to like the Nickelodeon Resort, I believe.
Yeah, they're a Nickelodeon Studios family hotel or resort. Is where they supposedly transferred this time capsule to. Now, whether or not it's going to be moved again, I thought once you bury something like a time capsule, you can't. Well, they didn't open it.
You would imagine so.
But you keep moving it around, it kind of loses its flavor, I think, a little bit. So that's a good point you brought that up, because I was thinking about that earlier today. It says preserved within the time capsule are the items and thoughts that were important to the kids of 1992, and it also says here. The Nickelodeon time capsule was buried on this spot on April 30th, 1992 as a gift to the kids of the future. So on April 30th of 2042, they're going to open it up, hopefully. Even I don't even know if the networks will even be around then. Because, the way things are going nowadays, I don't know, they don't really seem to, we're not bashing anybody or anything, but they don't really seem to honor things the way they once did. So I don't know if there's even going to be there's
no value anymore.
No, there isn't.
Those days are over.
You and I will probably be in, I don't know what age we'll be then. 50, 60, 70, I don't know, whatever.
We'll still be watching reruns of Rugrats and Doug.
Yeah, and then they'll open this up and then they'll see, what was so popular in the early 90s at that time. Very neat idea. I just hope they follow through with it.
Well, who knows? Maybe one day Nicktoons and animation and Nickelodeon will come back and they'll relocate it to Nickelodeon Studios.
Yeah, yeah. It will follow its footsteps. They'll reopen it back up, and everything will be just like a one. Hey, you never know. Sometimes history repeats itself, as they say.
You never know.
So, Nick at Night, quickly, because we're starting to run a little bit out of time. Nick at Night. How much do you remember, like the earliest days of that?
I started watching Nick at Night probably Yeah, I wouldn't say late 80s, but I remember more of the early 90s.
Okay.
I remember all the cool promo commercials they used to cut with the really kooky jingles.
Yeah, they really were a lot of fun, and that's what made them recognizable over those years.
But my favorite shows growing up on Nick at Night were Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Happy Days, The Brady Bunch,
Wonder Years.
The Wonder Years,
Yep.
The Monkees. I remember taping a huge marathon on VHS, and I still have it on VHS somewhere. When I go back and watch it, I see all these old commercials, and I go, oh my god, commercials were so different back then. But there really wasn't a bad show on Nick at Night back then.
No, they really had a very good schedule. They're going for many years.
Yeah.
They really did. I go back to the late 80s when they were showing mostly like black and white sitcoms, Mr. Ed,
Yep.
The Donna Reed Show, My Three Sons. Then they started to get into the sketch comedy programs from the 70s like Fernwood Tonight, talk shows of that category. They were showing reruns of the best of Saturday Night Live there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a powerhouse. It just took off overnight. They started to add show after show. The network really peaked in the early to mid to late 1990s. And then it got to the point where they couldn't top it anymore. And then it just seemed like slowly they started to get more and more modern. And that's kind of when I said farewell and moved elsewhere. But it was definitely a fun time. And if you weren't there to appreciate it, you really missed a lot. And if you were there to appreciate it, you really had a...
Yeah, it was a gift.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the kids this day and age. I think they'd actually truly enjoy it.
I do too, but I don't think corporate, for some reason, wants to...
No. Whoever's doing the programming there should be fired.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could take it over. You would see a big change in that, but it definitely was fun, and it influenced me. Obviously, the stuff I've been doing for years now came out of that. And it's a special time in my life, and I know, Adam, it's a special time of your life as well.
Absolutely, Tim.
So I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in for this special edition of The Real Footage Show with Tim Davis and my special guest and friend, Adam Belveduto. It was a pleasure being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for the shirt as well.
Oh, no problem.
Adam has on his Ren and Stimpy t-shirt, and I have my color-coded orange Nickelodeon Splat t-shirt as well here for this occasion. If you have any comments or questions, we recommend that you write them in the comment section either on YouTube or on Facebook at your leisure. And please send us your positive responses, or even if you have some negative stuff we're doing wrong, stuff we're doing right, let us know, because we don't know if you don't tell us. And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of The Real Footage Show. Until then, bye-bye.